Dylan's having some computer problems.
Hold on just 1 minute. Dylan's having some computer problems. If you can hold on.
Can you go off mute? I'll call you when he's ready.
My cell?
No, you've got it blocked.
I do. That's because I don't want to tell them not to put anything through that. Okay. So if we can wait just a minute, Dylan's having some technical difficulties.
Sure. March 1st, 2022. The roll call, Kathy Downs.
Here.
Chris Johnson. You're muted, Chris.
Here again. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. And Katie Hessler and Larry Wall are absent. Mark Eastman is present. First order is the approval of the minutes from 2/1/2022. Any comments?
So, nope, no comments. So moved.
I'll second it, and thank you, Kathy, for the grammatical corrections that you made to them. I appreciate it. It was embarrassing to see how many mistakes I made.
All
No
right.
problem.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay, the next item is discussion items. The first one being Moulton Cemetery.
The primary reason that's on is just to
Sue?
notify anyone in the public that's watching and the committee that at their meeting on February 10th, the council approved the bid from Tom Stevens Cemetery Restoration for the repairs to stones in Moulton and Oak Hill, as well as the relocation of the stones and the setting of those from Riverview to the 917 River Road property. And they also approved, over and above the damaged stones at Oak Hill and the vandalized stones at Moulton, the repair of an additional 80 to 100 at Oak Hill, and the remainder of those in Moulton that were needed to be reset or be repaired. So that, and all of that work is scheduled to be done midsummer. I reached out to Mr. Stevens, and he indicated he had some ahead of us, but it would be midsummer and it would get done this year. So I think that's really good news, and it kind of moves us forward in a very positive way on those two cemeteries, that one that was storm damage and one that was vandalism, and provides a path to moving the stones from Riverview to that way. And now that we've done that, I can reach out to Riverview to talk to them about what their expectations are in terms of the removal of those stones and landscaping or restoration of property following that. So.
Any questions, Kathy or Chris?
No questions on that. I would like to think that we will have a meeting with the, is it Stevens? Is that his last name, I believe?
Yes.
Stevens, before he starts his, so we'll have a full understanding of what his plans are, as well as that he meets some of our requirements should they develop over time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next item is the cemetery budget proposal.
I said we haven't done this before. The only thing the town has ever budgeted before are just the annual cemetery donations. That's all that we've ever has been reflected in our budget. And so, well, this is simple. The reason the mowing contract that we have in Oak Hill is there. The funds from the Oak Hill Cemetery pay for that, but it's from us. So that's in there, the annual donations that we normally do. And then I budgeted for stone repair and resetting for 80 to 100 stones, figuring if we did that on an annual basis, that we would be catching up with some of our cemeteries where the stones are. But what that would require is something that we've talked about doing, is sort of inventorying the condition of these and setting a priority list of where we start with getting the stones reset or repaired as necessary. And then I added an additional $10,000 to finish the 917 River Road over and above the cost of the reset of the relocation that's there, to go along with the money that's still sitting, that will remain in that account for fencing and that kind of stuff that has to be done. So it does not include an estimation of the time that the highway department, because they've never tracked how many hours they were in an individual cemetery or have done that. In the coming year, I can have them do that so we can have a better idea of what the time commitment is on the part of highway for that. But for right now, it's part of their regular wages, and I don't have a way to give you an accurate idea of what that number is. So that will be a work in progress, so the next year's budget can reflect it. It can reflect it as part of the highway budget, separated out that's that. But, tracking that in terms of time cards and all that is a little more difficult.
And with this, so do we need a motion or something for a recommendation to the council, or is this just a proposal?
Well, the question is whether you think this is enough money, whether you think there should be something different, whether there's, as I said, we've not done this before in this way. The only thing the town has ever done is itemize the donations to cemeteries. That's been it.
I think it's a start. I think it looks good. It's a start, and see where we're at the end of the summer. And
I'd agree with you, Kathy. I mean, we can start there, and if it needs
the
adjustments.
highway. Yeah, I think it's a start.
And the cost of the 80 to 100 stones is based on the cost that we got from Mr. Stevens for that. So we know that it's not a guess. It's a cost that he bid on for repair and resetting stones. So.
Okay.
And all of this work identified here would happen in the spring of 23. We've just authorized 22's work here a short time ago, all that work that's going to be done. But this 22-23 budget, likely the majority would be done in, other than the mowing of contract for Oak Hill and the finishing 917, the resetting of the additional 80 to 100 would be in the summer of 23, or spring, early summer.
Yep.
Chris?
Any other comments, Chris?
Thank you for your information on that. I'm looking at this as like three issues here. One is the veterans and identifying veteran graves and making sure, especially on town-maintained cemeteries. Two is the maintenance of the town-maintained cemeteries, period. And three is the money that's being allocated out to those cemeteries as well as to the private cemeteries. And I notice a great disparity on the cemetery listing of monies dispensed out. Now, I'm not opposed to any of this money being dispensed out. I just wish that we had a better understanding of what's happening to it and how it's being utilized. I really think I've noticed some things as I've been working with the records recently, that there are town-owned lots, or town reserve lots, in a lot of these cemeteries now. I know up where I am here, there was there were pauper lots down at the bottom of the main section. I just noticed that Evergreen has some town lots set aside for the town. And I assume Silver Lake must have some. I don't know, Kathy, if there's some out there at all. But I'm not, there's nothing wrong here. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of more information that would be nice to have as we go forward, so we could plan better, and we could, you know, be as transparent as possible to the public as to what's going on. But I really think this is a great start. And I will also tell you that I contacted the American Legion this last week to ask them about their understanding of veterans and how they have identified where graves are located. At that point, the gentleman said they just look for the markers on the graves. I got to think there's more information, and I know there is some information that I got from the library as to veteran grave locations. But we really, really need to get on top of where the veterans are. My understanding is there's no, the system I assume is that Mitchell Tweedy lets people know when they get a veteran a funeral. I don't know how it works, but for the town's purpose, at least, we should know where the veterans all are and how that new veterans are placed, and whether we're alerted to that. Even, you know, we not necessarily would have to worry about non-maintained town, private cemeteries, but it would be still nice to know. And I'm working on getting that information out. And I know that there's been some work done on it from the library in the past, and I've got access to some of that information. But it would be nice to get it into a digital system or a spreadsheet where we can monitor it. There's a lot of information. I'm just trying to gather it as quick as I can. But we really need to pay attention to the veterans' graves first, I think. Thank you.
I flipped through the deed box. Remember the deed box I talked to you about? And found deeds to lots in Evergreen and Buck Cemetery. So those deeds are there. I have seen those. There's another box that's less organized than the first box that has some very old deeds, and I'm not sure to what all of them are. They're not labeled well. So that project is going to take some sort of investigation to figure out what some of that stuff is and whether any of it relates to the cemeteries. And as to the veterans, you said the VFW doesn't have
The American Legion.
I mean the American Legion doesn't have a list. It goes by.
That was the information I was given. I'm still looking around to see how they determine where to place flags, for example, at these various cemeteries. And that may have been a misunderstanding of my question, which was, you know, how do you know where all these veterans are? And the gentleman told me they look for markers on the graves.
I wonder if there's something that the State Department of Veterans Affairs could help us with in terms of their list of where veterans are buried.
Well, I think perhaps that I do have a list. There's a list of the Civil War veterans at the Oak Hill Cemetery. There's an extensive list in the records that I've been scanning. There's another list that shows veterans, and you know those are all available in that folder. But I'd like to think that there's an updated list somewhere else. And I will bring these out of that folder. You all have access to all this information. But if you go through and scan for veterans, you'll see some lists that are there. I just want to make sure it's comprehensive and complete. I guess that's my big concern here.
Okay, and I don't doubt that. I just didn't know if that in terms of the central repository of records that
right.
that would be the most accurate place to get, you know, from all service branches and all.
I will continue working on it and see what I can find out, and hopefully we can get Kate involved too, because she.
Well, we're flopping over into number C now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Say so.
I'm sorry.
No. It's a natural progression, because what we're talking about is reflects what we'll need in item B, in terms of ensuring the town provides the American Legion with $800 a year for flags, which it puts out on veterans' graves. But we give them that amount and they use it for markers and flags. And
Would that be put under the cemetery budget?
it hasn't been, but it should be.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it.
The other thing is Riverview's not on there. I'm speaking up for my neighbors here. They're not listed on that. And the reason for that is many, many years ago, when they decided to start doing this, I piped up and said, I don't think Riverview really needs that money, whereas some of the town maintained ones were. So that's why you don't see Riverview on there.
I'll add the amount we give, that we appropriate for flags and markers for veterans annually, because that is part of our budget.
And any money we give to private cemeteries, it would be nice to understand why we're giving money to private cemeteries that are not maintained and what the difference is.
I totally admit that the amounts that we're doing are the amounts the town has done for a very long time, and I don't know the origin of the donation level or the purpose, or I shouldn't say purpose, I don't know when they started or why they did it, but I know that the town we've continued that practice. Kathy, do you have any? It's been around as long as you have, probably, too.
Yeah, it was around before I came on board.
And I want to be clear, I'm not opposed to any of these levels. I'm just curious as to why some of the private cemeteries are now getting substantially more. I assume it's because of placement of indigent. I don't know what the reasons are on that. And I'm sure there's a good reason there, but it stands out considerably much that private cemeteries seem to be getting more money than the town-maintained cemeteries. And that I'm sure there's a good reason for it. I'm just curious as to if we can find out.
We have the cemetery. I think you spoke with Jacob about it. We have the deed boxes, and then we have the cemetery book that's in the vault that is more information, but I don't know. I haven't gone back through that to try and see if there's some ta-da moment at which the town made the decision to do that.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Any other business? I mean, that kind of concludes the, what am I thinking of here? Agenda.
I would just hope that as we communicate with Mr. Stevens, that we let everybody know what's happening in that, so that we can be prepared, because there's been some public noise about being able to view some of these moves of some of these placements and, resetting some of these stones for whatever reason. And I'm not sure there's a good or a bad answer on this. It's just being able to let the public know where we're at with it at all times and what the expectations are. Because there's a lot of detail goes into this, and I want to make sure that everybody's aware of what that is. So.
Okay.
Oak Hill is one thing. The private property location at 917 River Road won't allow public on the site to do that. There's no requirement for that under law. I can't force the property owners to allow anybody who wants to show up to watch.
And have they shared that opinion with you?
What's that?
Have the current owners shared that opinion of that?
The current owners want will allow the required, the public works people, the person who's setting the stone, those kind of things, but it is not going to be an open to the public.
And I understand that. I understand that. Have they shared that with you?
Yes,
Okay.
that they've had concern over the way they've been approached on some things, and they are, it's a private cemetery, and under law, they're not required to allow the general public to come and go on their property as it chooses.
And wasn't that their request when we were talking to them about it too?
What's that?
Wasn't it their request when we were talking about the cemetery up back there, that they didn't want people just coming and showing
That's
up?
right. They were very clear on that.
Yeah.
So have we determined where that right of way is exactly?
That is going to have a survey establish that as soon as the snow is gone enough so that I know where that we can establish the line in order to move what we're doing over far enough so it's not impacting the right of way or that.
Okay.
But they're not going to survey right now. It's kind of
I understand.
wouldn't work very well.
Because there is a culvert out in the middle of that property. You know, like that was the access. I'm not saying I know where it is, but there was a culvert opening from from River Road up to the back there.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle, not the side.
There's also been a horseshoe right-of-way sketch on Facebook that is showing it going in on the one side, going down on the back, and coming out the other side of where the home is now. And then there's another sketch showing a right-of-way all the way from that back lot all the way down through to Route 15. It warrants taking a look at to make sure that we have an understanding as to what's being said and what's being proposed. It would be tragic to just reestablish a right-of-way when it doesn't exist there. You know, that's the one thing I worry about. And also doing something in a right-of-way is my secondary concern. We need to make sure we nail it.
That's my big concern, is doing something in a right of way or on property that we don't have permission to be doing it on in the first place.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Any other, or do we want to set another meeting, Sue, or?
We had set them for every other month, but then we decided we were doing them every month because we had bids going on and that kind of thing. They're right now set. I think the next one is set for May but we can do it one in April if the committee wants to. We're not going to, Mr. Stevens won't be coming here to do any kind of anything until probably June. So even for come talk about how Public Works is going to help him and, what the schedule will be and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I would think May, going in May would be fine. We'd be through budget season at least.
Yeah,
And
I think.
Chris, you okay with that?
No, but that's all right. I can live with it. I'd rather go with a monthly just to update. This has only been a half hour out of our time, But if you guys, I'm outvoted 2-1. I'll go with April. I mean, May. No guilt.
I don't have an objection, Chris, if you want to meet. I just don't know if we have something to talk about. I'm happy to meet.
I just think updating the public as often as possible is a good thing, especially since we're getting very heavily criticized on a lot of different fronts for what has not happened over the past.
I'm apparently not privy to the fronts that we're talking about because I haven't seen them. But
Me neither.
and I'm not sure what the criticism is, other than we haven't moved quickly enough, which I totally understand. But think that certainly in the last month or so, we've made some pretty significant progress in all of these areas, and I'm not sure.
My thought is that we should schedule for May unless something comes up that we need to meet. And we can always do a meeting. That's my thought.
Chris, after this meeting, you can let me know where this information is that's heavily critical of what the town is doing, because it's not been shared with the town.
Oh, I don't need to do it after the meeting. What I'm saying is that it's not going to disappear overnight. So it's just not going to disappear overnight, no matter what we do. We have to establish that we are going to be a town that takes pride in their cemeteries and does the utmost we possibly can to recognize veterans. And that needs to be an ongoing long-term plan, because there's an ongoing long-term history of not doing that, and that's gotten out, and it's a hard ship to turn around, and we're doing it now. We're starting that process, and I want to make sure that people understand that, because
I don't expect anyone to believe it in the first 5 minutes. Absolutely not. You're correct. I think that the establishment of a budget, the approval that the council just made to do that is, certainly different than what may have happened in the past. But that with a budget ingrained and a contractor that can be brought in annually to work on this and work to establish the list of what is the most accurate list of veterans in Bucksport, not just in towns, just, buried in Bucksport cemeteries overall, would then give whoever was responsible or took on the task of placing those flags an accurate list to go from. That we wouldn't be missing anybody who just didn't have a marker on their grave. So we could be better at getting this done. So I totally agree that it is our responsibility to make sure these things get done, and that this is a path forward that allows that to happen. Certainly over time, not overnight, but it didn't happen overnight. And
right.
To correct that by making it a long-term commitment. But it's a long-term commitment that rests with the council in terms of continuing to budget and all of that kind of thing too.
And I appreciate that, because I wanted to be clear that I wasn't pointing a finger at you, but I do point the finger at the council members to make sure they understand that this will be, in my hopes, a forever commitment, that won't get to a point where we'll say, that's done, and we'll move on to something else, because it doesn't happen that way. The Oak Hill Cemetery had a major cleaning by a Mr. Whedon from Orrington way back in the early 90s. And I assume that I haven't been there recently, but I assume it probably needs it again. I'm not sure. I can't speak to that. But I also had a vandalism issue back in the early 90s. And so that isn't new in this town either. But we sometimes have short memories in need of long-term solutions. I'd like to see a more secure environment in these cemeteries, and that, in the form of surveillance, even if we have to get to that, which I hope we don't. But we are doing surveillance on our waterfront, and we're getting more vandalism at these outside cemeteries. I don't know if it's going to stop, but maybe it's time. I know organizations now that are using surveillance cameras, and I hate it. I hate the thoughts of it, but we can't keep having this vandalism. We had vandalism. I was able to avoid vandalism up here at Riverview when I was sexton there. Luckily, I was able to avoid it, but it pops up periodically, and it's just such a debilitating kind of behavior for the town and for the lot owners. But I would like to think that there's sometime we can look at that possibility as well, of putting a surveillance system in so that people know when they go in. We'll have a history of it or whatever. And I know that's draconian, but we can't keep having vandalism. We just can't. Thank you.
Okay.
So it's May. First Tuesday in May.
So May, you said first Tuesday, May 3rd?
May 3rd.
Same time?
Yep. good for me. Thank you.
All right. I guess we just need a motion to adjourn.
Do you want the May 3rd meeting to be in person or remote?
Chris, if you're comfortable in person, I would say let's schedule it in person, and if we have to change it, we'll change it accordingly.
Okay. I can wear a mask. It's no big deal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kathy, is that easier for you, or you going to have an Augusta thing that day? Or?
It does not matter. We're supposed to be done April 20th. So
I mean, if everybody rather meet this way, I'm happy that way too. It doesn't matter to me.
does not matter to me either.
If you're more comfortable, Chris, and not having to wear a mask, that's fine. We'll do it this way. And if Katie can
It doesn't
attend,
deal with masks. It's just whether I want to get my butt out of the house and drive into town. And,
your call.
that's my only issue, and that's no reason. I think it gives a chance for the public to show up as well,
Okay.
and I think
Okay.
that's good.
All right.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Have a good day.